Hello, Hugh.
Hi, Greg. I'm out
Looks
here.
like you're out for a swim today.
Yeah, out on the Pacific Ocean here. I'm on the West Coast, you know. We got waves here, earthquakes and waves. I have a
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I have a Jewish rabbi who stole my trademark bottom line years ago. Um, um, he says that a big tidal wave is going to hit me and I'm going to die in a tidal wave out here where I live on Highway 5. Um, but it's right on the Pacific Ocean. So I'm in my dinghy with my dinghy hat and put up a background of the Pacific Ocean here. How are you doing?
Right, right. Well, I'm doing pretty good. I just want to verify something with you.
What's that?
A person on Periscope, young lady, and I will send her a copy of this video. She told me that you were my imaginary friend. Are you a real person, Hugh?
No, I'm completely imaginary, Greg. You imagine me. I'm just like a nightmare or
Okay.
something. I don't. Am I a
Right, right.
nightmare or a good dream? I don't know.
Well, I mean, you're ugly enough to be a nightmare, maybe,
I
but
think is she one of those flat earthers we were making fun of the other day?
you would think so.
She thinks you imagine me. I'm your imaginary friend, right? On YouTube?
Yeah.
Was it on YouTube?
No, no, it's on Periscope.
On Periscope. Well, put this
Hmm.
video up on Periscope and let her know that Hugh Squire is a real person and I own Bottomline, New York all my life.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
government,
I intend to do that.
the government stole my business, $2 trillion in worldwide entertainment contracts in every country on earth, and then they gave you 9/11, murdered four of my wives to hide the murder of the Kennedy family, and 9/11 and Jimmy Hoffa's murder, and Hollywood's still helping them with fake movies. Um,
Yeah, and in fact, one of those movies we were going to talk about tonight, and one of your, um, well, she wasn't your wife, she was your fiance. So Kiki, we wanted to talk about tonight,
yeah, Kiki
and
Nelson. Her
mhm.
sister was the cover girl on Maybelline magazine, and Mae Musk, before Elon Musk was born, took her place on the day Kiki was murdered. And then she had Elon Musk, and the rest is history. Harris, who I'm the Harris family, and the Harris family went to college and grade school with Elon Musk.
Gee,
And
we're sure hearing a lot about that Harris name today, aren't we?
oh, Kamala, if, I had to laugh today. I listened to the news. They said she's an African American. Well, or she's from Africa. She's a black
Hmm.
African woman.
Yeah.
Well, do I look black, Greg?
No, no. I kind of wondered just how many. I see her mother was Indian, her dad was Jamaican. How many Indians or Jamaicans are named Harris, I wonder?
None in my family that I'm aware of. My family
Yeah.
thrashers in the
Hmm.
Smithsonian. The Harris steam thrashers are there in the Smithsonian forever. That was my family made those in the Fuller transmission. Mr. Harris married the Mrs. Fuller, and you got Fuller transmissions in every semi. You go 5 gears, pop the pin, go five more. That's the Fuller transmission. I'm Mr. Fuller, and I'm Mr. Harris.
That's
And
the same
Kamala,
family as Harris Banks.
I look pretty black, don't I?
Oh, yeah,
Well, the
definitely.
American Harris family never lived in Africa, to my knowledge, and we never lived in India or Pakistan. I do have a key in the Virgin Islands Michael Jackson's family gave me to visit Jeffrey Epstein back in the 80s, but I never went there. Um, and I'm the Harris family. So I had to laugh at the news today that says she's a black African. She'll be the first black African on a major U.S. Presidential ticket. Only
Hmm.
she's not black. If she's got my name, um, I'm a white
Yeah,
man.
Jamaicans are only partially black to begin with. So even
And
her father's side, she would only be partially black. And then because they're mixed with a Spanish heritage, and then her Indian mother. So at best, she's about a 1/4% black.
yeah, and she earned her lawyer's degree out of my stolen trademark bottom line. She studied on
Yeah.
the bottom line to pass the bar exam, and that was stolen from me 50 years ago, 60 years
Hmm.
ago, by the U.S. government. So I would have to say that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, I mean, they were groomed to be who they are today by people who aren't Americans, people like Obama from Kenya. And I know that Jamaica doesn't, she isn't an American being born in Jamaica, and she isn't an American being born in India. I really think she's probably born in Pakistan. And then
Right.
she got some kind of college grant to come here to California and study out of my stolen trademark when she was a little girl. But she's definitely not my family. In this country, my family, in the generation before me, they were KKK. They didn't own any blacks and they didn't like blacks. So for her to call herself Harris, my family name, and then for the media to say she's a black African, that's kind of far-fetched. Because there are
So we had the socialite Mrs. Harris, who was Clara Harris, who was with Lincoln at Ford's Theater. We had the Harris steam thrashers that the invention, the tractor, the steam tractor that was given, or not given, but sold to the farmers in World War I. We have Harris Banks, and now we have the Harris Poll and Harris Publishing. This is a pretty important name here in America.
Now I have a black African cousin, which is fine with me. I'm not a racist person, but I know she's not the Harris family.
She's not connected to any of those lines.
But
she seems to be playing with that name to try to associate herself with that name.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's a real name or not. I don't even really care. But I do know that Joe Biden, he picked her because of my family's name. And I don't think it. I know it. They've been covering up my truth of Kennedy's murder and Hoffa's murder and the Oakland County child killers forever. Mm-hmm. And I'm the Harris family, and I was kidnapped back in '57. And those same governors that kidnapped me as they murdered Admiral Byrd, they raped and tortured me and killed little kids and threw them on my properties. And this is all covered up for 7 decades now. I'm 70 years old. They did this to me at birth on the same day they murdered Admiral Byrd, my family member. And I know Kamala Harris, she's no part of that. She wasn't even born yet. But Joe Biden, I know he's using me for that out of his home state of Delaware, because my family, Thomas Jefferson and the people before him, we were the original colony there. And we threw the army, King George's army off the Delaware Bridge. So Joe Biden from Delaware, and I grew up with Della, the chief of the largest Indian tribe on earth in Oakland County. Her father was my friend, and she went to kindergarten with me. Joe Biden is counting on that to steal my name and then try to make a tie-in for history books like this is the Harris family that was with Lincoln, and it's all BS. Mm-hmm. It's just BS. And Kamala Harris is nothing. These people in the White House and the government, Donald Trump borrowed $5 billion from my family's bank, never paid us back. 5 times, never paid us back, but he's rich.
He didn't pay back Harris Bank, but he paid back Deutsche Bank, didn't he?
Say that again, Greg?
He didn't pay back Harris Bank. He stole that money and went bankrupt, but he was a little more obligated to repay the Deutsche Bank. I'm guessing probably with stimulus money. What do you think?
Yeah, probably. He probably printed
the
money he paid them back with. If he even paid them back yet, who knows? Right. But so all these people in the Senate and the White House, they've been kidnapping me and killing little kids and throwing them on my property for 7 decades so they can be on your ticket to be your president. And that includes A.G. Barr. Roseanne Barr was my next door neighbor with O'Brien, Kathy O'Brien. Her father was my friend, Dr. O'Brien.
Sure, the MK Ultra victims there, huh?
Oh, yeah, all that BS hiding my kidnap and torture and rape. Yeah.
Right.
And those were
so they actually hide the real people the real kids that were actually murdered, make up a baloney story about MK Ultra, which doesn't even really exist, pretend like they were the rapist victims, while completely not disclosing and diverting attention from all those kids who really were raped and murdered right there around you, including yourself and your own brother that was murdered.
Right, that's correct. And it wasn't just my brother murdered. My mother had three sisters, and her own mother, Mrs. Fuller, murdered, and her brother Harold were all murdered prior to the kids on Clinton River Road. And then my mother's other sister, her two children were murdered, and my Aunt Rose, her kids, three or four of her children were murdered, and then the family next door to us, the Duncan family, was murdered. On the five kids from the Duncan family were murdered on the same day they murdered John F. Kennedy.
Clinton River Road, I believe that's the same road that they found a drop of Jimmy Hoffa's blood and supposedly.
That wasn't Jimmy Hoffa's blood, but the Miller family lived there on Clinton River Road.
Okay.
Part of the same family lived on Clinton River Road, but that house was in another city.
Okay. So it's connected to that family.
There.
Okay.
And I knew the whole Miller family. They worked for me, and so did Tony Tocco. So everything in the news and all the books about Hoffa, that's all baloney and BS. And it's coming from the very people like the Barr family and Senator Graham, and Peter Graham owns Graham Trucking. They're hiding my truth of the Oakland County child killers, who are the people who murdered JFK and his brothers. And all the media denies I exist. It's interesting to me that Kathy O'Brien and Roseanne Barr said that they were victims of Hollywood, and the Barr family owns or they don't own it, they run Senator Graham's TV stations in Detroit. So it's interesting how they concocted this story about MK Ultra and being used by Hollywood, as their families ran Hollywood on Detroit, Michigan television and Canadian television. That's Canada.
It was
too.
very interesting to me, Hugh, that Roseanne Barr was about half a step behind me, trying to, through another person who had worked at your former property there in Tennessee, and trying to divert my attention to get me away from you, to divert my attention and get me to think about MK Ultra and that sort of thing. She herself was just one person removed away from me, trying to get my attention away from you. Yeah, that's how closely they follow you.
Yeah, they stalked me all my life. They stalked me, and then they take my story and they make it their own. And they've done this since the day I was born. The Barr family.
They clearly don't want your story to go to this extent. They do not want your
Barr, story. Osborne, Anderson, Walker, all these people have done this to me.
And to explain that further to some people, they're not all going to know these connections, Hugh. So I want to try to explain it a little bit. Now that I'm getting to know your story, I feel like I can do that a little better now. But you were talking about Graham Media. Well, that's who runs WJR Radio. And that's where Rush Limbaugh got his start. And now to this day,
I stopped the Senate drugs, and then the drug dealer was a guy named Hank. And then when I did that, the senators were selling the guns and drugs illegally, and Senator Graham was one of the people selling them illegally.
Right. So this is Graham Media, and right now in charge of Graham Media is Emily Barr, and we have Attorney General Barr, and Roseanne Barr is hiding your story. It's not a coincidence that Attorney General Barr looks so much like Roseanne Barr.
and the main person who's supposed to help people like me or people born in Oakland County, his name is Help Me Hank, and his name is Hank Winchester. And I stopped Hank from selling illegal guns and drugs through the Senate back in the 1979, 1980, with they murdered my fiance Kiki. At the same time, they murdered Kiki Camarino, and Elvis Presley died, and John Belushi died. As I stopped the drugs, they were running.
Kiki was a CIA agent and a drug runner out there doing. Was it Noriega's drugs too down there in?
Yeah,
Panama,
El Chapo, Noriega. I stopped all that in Panama. They were selling drugs all over the place. They were selling guns, which is worth more money than drugs. And they were, when the countries buying the guns didn't have enough money, they would give them illegal drugs. And then the senators were taking illegal drugs and then distributed the drugs through the CIA and FBI and police all over.
Yeah, at the time, you're engaged to Kiki, formerly Nelson, well, I guess she's still Nelson.
She's the Nelson family, yeah.
Yeah, Kiki. Like Ricky Nelson.
Her real name was Karen.
Willie Nelson.
Karen Kissel, and you have a Dr. Kissel.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, she's the Kissel family, and in Detroit.
Because of Karen Kissel, people called her Kiki. So the FBI concocted the story of Kiki Camarino as you stopped the drug trades, and he was out there supposedly killed.
He was
Or
CIA.
CIA, not FBI. I apologize.
Well, they killed Kiki Camarino at the same time they murdered my fiance. My fiance was chained to a tree by 5 black guys. Her teeth kicked out.
Right.
She was raped. She was with Sylvester Stallone's wife on that day. I and Kiki had separated because my own brother had raped her in front of our kids, and we were supposed to be married, and that never happened. Then Kiki was murdered. All right.
So
Kiki
let's talk about there on Belle Isle, which Isle is Michigan talk for islands. It's an island on the Detroit River.
It's Belle Isle, not Ill. Belle Isle.
They call that one Isle, but they call the other ones Isle, huh?
No, it's Isle. There's no Ill. It's Belle Isle.
Oh. Okay. See, my mom was from that area, and she would go out to Gross Eel, and everybody called it, instead of Isle, they always pronounced it Eel. I thought, well, that was really weird. So I assumed that they did the same thing.
No, Gross Eel is another. That's a whole nother.
Yeah, that's a whole nother. Yeah, my mom used
Belle
to clean
Isle
up
is
there
in a city. It's an island on offshore of Detroit.
Okay, so they called it Island, not Eel or Isle or whatever.
Yeah, well,
okay, so out on Belle Isle, you were partying there with Sylvester Stallone and Antonio Banderas.
Not Sylvester Stallone, not Antonio Banderas. I and Kiki would go there, and my band would play there now and then, Bottomline. And I and Kiki were with Sylvester Stallone's ex-wife. I had divorced my wife. I hired Karen to be my babysitter when I divorced Mary Westhouse. And Kiki would hang out with Sylvester Stallone's ex-wife, who was a black woman. And Kiki had long black hair. She was a white girl, but she would tan with Sylvester Stallone's wife until she looked black.
Right.
And I was out there on Belle Isle with her and Sylvester Stallone's wife many times. We would go out there and party, and Kiki loved to tan. What were you trying to get at there?
No, I just wanted to talk about that's where she was raped there.
Yeah, she was raped on Belle Isle by 5 black men. And it's interesting that at that time I was with Gilbert Hill, chief of police, and Eddie Murphy was making his first movie with Gilbert Hill down in the Keys. And I was down in the Keys and at Hemingway's house. And I jumped on a motorcycle and drove down to the Keys. The motorcycle broke down, or the car, and I had to take a bus back to Detroit. On the bus, I drove back on a Greyhound bus with Gilbert Hill, the police chief in Detroit, and Eddie Murphy. We arrived in Detroit, said goodbye, and I never saw Kiki alive again. But Rick James came out with an album called The Very Kiki Girl at the same time she was murdered, just before she was murdered. Yeah. I and Kiki, we were going to get married. I hired her as my babysitter as I divorced my wife. And I divorced my wife. My wife didn't divorce me. A lot of people think my wives divorced me. No, I divorced my first 2 wives. I didn't like them. They liked to do drugs. Their families hurt people. And I didn't like being around them. So I divorced them. Gilbert Hill was chief of police, and I delivered for Morrison to every strip club and blind pig in Detroit. So I knew every prostitute and drug dealer in Detroit. And it was their drugs I stopped on my farm in Utica, Michigan. They started that drug and gun trade via the Senate on my farm as I performed music in Detroit clubs. And,
so the police protected all of it, and the Senate ran it. The Senate of the United States.
Yeah, the police and the chief of police, they protect the prostitutes and the drug dealers. And a guy like me that stops it, they put me in jail and kidnap my daughter.
While actual CIA agents were running the drugs.
Correct. And then they had a mirror, Kiki, who was murdered at the same time my fiance Kiki was murdered. And this is all true.
An interesting thing that I just discovered, you were talking about
Detroit, Michigan, and Oakland County.
Right. you were talking about how Rick James in his album Super Freak sang that song, A Very Kinky Girl. And I noticed when I was playing it a little bit ago, that's the same music as MC Hammer's Can't Touch This. And there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
go
yeah.
ahead and
There's a
tell us the
reason.
reason.
I was murdered. Well, they tried to murder me in Livonia dump. I was with my lowboy waiting for a bulldozer to come and take the load off my truck. And
Livonia is a city in Michigan, for those
yeah,
who don't know.
and they have a Livonia. They have a dump there, and I had a whole bunch of wood from a house and pallets on the back of a lowboy, and I was waiting for them to put it in a chipper, and this is a great big like grater, circular grater that they throw the wood in, and it makes wood chips for your lawn. So I'm standing next to this wood chipper, and somebody hit me from behind with a sledgehammer, tried to kill me, and I won that fight and lived. And you got MC Hammer right after Rick James.
Using the same
singing
music.
A Very Kinky Girl. And an MC Hammer, I had just divorced Mary Westhouse. So MC, he chose that name on purpose after Rick James. And I don't think it, I know it. Diana Ross from Motown Records, she still sings Bottomline out here on the West Coast, which is my trademark, stolen by the government in the 70s via DuPont and the WWE and the Detroit News and Free Press. And pretty much all my neighbors in Oakland County, they attacked me and murdered little kids on my properties all my life. So, and I get there's no justice. They always turn a blind eye to my truth.
And the police always refuse to make reports. Now, you mentioned that
they don't make reports, Greg, because they want to be your president in the White House. And that's what the White House presidents have all been about since they murdered my cousin JFK. And the reason you thought Antonio Banderas and Sylvester Stallone was because of Cafe Dina Marie.
That's what I was getting at. It's like you can read my mind.
Yeah, I played music at Cafe Dina Marie for Banderas and Stallone. Back when Reagan was shot. Reagan had visited my college, and Cafe Dina Marie was around the corner. And they actually made a movie that looked just like that cafe back then. I think it was called Assassin. I think it was the name of the movie. So I was involved in all of that Hollywood BS because I owned a publishing company, and I owned 28,000 worldwide entertainment contracts. And all of that was stolen from me back in the 70s. When they stole the World Wildlife Federation trademark, they also stole Bottomline's trademark. And I'm the owner of Bottomline. Because they murdered me with things like sledgehammers and poison and stabbed me in the back with knives, I never got to defend myself, but I lived through it all. And then when
not surprisingly, the name of your business manager that put you into that restaurant had an interesting name.
Oh, David Fitzgerald, yeah. And that's a funny story too. Gilbert Hill and his police department, I delivered to all the blind pigs and topless and bottomless bars in Detroit. And I knew every hooker and prostitute in Detroit, and I'd pick them up, take them grocery shopping, take them to their homes. And I mean, I could date any one of these prostitutes, and the police never arrested me. David Fitzgerald picked up a hooker one time, and they took his house, his car, fined him $10,000 and put him in jail. David Fitzgerald. And that's no coincidence. But see, they always, the police department, they always protected me because I was part of their plan. And Al Brooks Patterson was hiding me and all those dead kids, so they didn't want me in front of judges.
I'm going to go into that name Fitzgerald just a little bit deeper, Hugh, because you're up there from, daggone it, what's the name of your town you were born in? All of a sudden it just left my brain.
Detroit, Michigan.
No, the little town where you were born. All of a sudden it just poofed out of my head.
Detroit, Michigan is where I was born.
Okay, but the little town where you grew up.
Hazel Park. It's right
Hazel Park, thank you.
It's right next door to Detroit. I was born at Holy Cross Hospital in Detroit.
Yeah.
I lived in Detroit.
right.
And
But
you're thinking when I was 2 or 3 and moved to Hazel Park.
right. That's what I mean.
8 miles.
Now the streets in Hazel Park, that was the word I forgot.
That was Hoover Street.
Okay, yeah, but the streets were named after presidents, and they all ran north and south except for 2 streets.
Right.
Lincoln and Fitzgerald Street, which
the Miller family was the civil servant in that area and named the streets. And Miller wrote the book after I bought him a house while he was working for me. The same civil servant wrote a book and said he killed Hoffa. It was complete BS. I bought the house for his daughter. His daughter was raped by the same pedophiles I was raped by, and she escaped them like I did, but she ran away to California at 12. I was 4 and I stayed and fought it out on my own. So yeah, that's all interrelated, Greg, but that's too much information for this video.
Yeah. Well, we mentioned David Fitzgerald put you in there in that
well,
restaurant.
He was my business manager after Rand Paul. Not Rand Paul, Paul.
Paul, yeah.
Their grandfather. He was my business manager in New York, and he sold me out to the Russian mafia. That's why you have de Blasio there now. De Blasio was a Russian man who took my bass player's name when Tony de Blasio died. And Tony was born in the Bronx, and he was a decorated Vietnam soldier, and he died of a heart attack. And on that day, a Russian man took his name and got elected in New York. This is how corrupt New York is. And I'm the truth of all these things. So.
Well, that's an awful lot of information for one video. Certainly enough to hopefully persuade
I hope it helps you with your book. People should read your book. You're writing my biography, and you've been working with me for a year on it. And it's a real pain to have somebody write your book because you have to edit everything they say and do. And we're learning that, aren't we, Greg?
Right.
It's a lot of work. And you've taken thousands of pages of notes on everything I say. And this video, I hope this video helps you a little. And don't worry, I'll edit everything you say so it's truth when the book comes out. And I wish you good luck, Greg. I hope I live long enough for your book to come out. I'd like to read it.
Well, I do too, and I hope you're around plenty of time after that too.
I want a handwritten copy of your first book where you first...
Oh, it's on the way. It's already in the mail.
Oh, you mailed it? Thank you. I'll pay you for that on PayPal or something.
You don't have to worry about that.
Well, I appreciate it, Greg. And you're the best author I have at Bottomline now. Too bad.
Hugh, you're the best imaginary friend I've ever had.
I know. They tell me that in all media. I don't exist. I never owned Bottomline. I didn't own the Bottomline bar. Bottomline wasn't my trademark. Kamala Harris is my family member, and I'm just demented. One thing I do know, if she's my family member, she's not African, and she's definitely not black. So
right.
For all my black friends back there in Detroit, don't listen to the media telling you she's a black African.
Yeah, she's not part of the Harris poll. She's not part of Harris Banks. She's not part of Clara Harris's family. She's not part of any of that. She's completely separate from that.
It's real interesting that my sister-in-law is sleeping with Joe and has been for quite a few years. Since she divorced my older brother. They were married like 30 years. She decided one day to divorce him and leave him for Joe. And everybody got Beyond Jovi. And that's my sister-in-law's name.
And so now they're linking Joe Biden.
These are the people in Oakland County that have hidden me my whole life. And Bon Jovi wrote, I'm hot. And David Lee Roth, they wrote, I'm hot for teacher. Well, I was a teacher, and so was Mary Miller. And Mary Miller was raped by the same Oakland County people who murdered JFK. And they hid it in Hollywood and in the music. And people like Roseanne Barr and Kathy O'Brien and Graham and Hall, Daryl Hall and Osborne, who runs the FBI. This is all a big cover-up, all the way back from the 50s. And I'm right in the center of it. Or, gee, why would you have Kamala Harris on the ballot again after Donald Trump stole $5 billion from my family's bank as they murdered my wives, you know. So I'm an imaginary old man, and I'm crazy, and I interject myself into all these things, Greg, according to the media and government. I'm just a crazy old man. And you know, I've told you these things years before they happened. You've known me about 2 years now, and I told you these things before they even happened, didn't I?
Oh, geez, we can make a list of all the things you tell me before they happen. It'd be a big list.
Yeah, all media, they deny I exist, Greg. And
you said at least 4 or 5 months ago, at least that Joe Biden was picking Kamala Harris.
Yeah, well, no, that's a no-brainer. It was either her or he had 4 or 5 women. And gee, you know, want to know what I think's going to happen?
Do tell.
We're going to have our first fake African-American president when they shoot Joe in the back of the head, behind his left ear. That's what I think, Greg. And Joe Biden, you're so un-American, it's pathetic. Obama wasn't an American citizen, and neither is Kamala Harris. And neither one of you are African Americans.
Right, neither one.
No.
All those people that think so, they're really getting scammed.
Yeah, it's a big media con. Big media con hiding my truth of who killed my cousins, the Kennedy family, and Abraham Lincoln, too. My great-great-grandmother was with them, Clara Harris. It's real interesting to see how low our politics have become. There's nobody in the White House or the Senate who hasn't dismembered and murdered little kids and women after raping them. And they all tell you what a great country of God we are, under God. Well, I think everybody in the Senate and the White House and running in every party, I think they're the devil's little minions pretending to love God. And that's coming, I'm related to many presidents, including the guy on your $20 bill.
And that could lead us into a whole nother video just on Baker.
Well, that'll be in your book. People need to read your book when it's done, Greg. And good luck to you. I probably won't be alive by then. But, you know.
Well, I hope you are.
Well, I hope so too, but I'm 70 years old now. I'm not going to live forever, and I do have that COVID virus. I keep getting fevers, and I can't breathe. I wake up every 3 hours. I can't breathe, and so far it hasn't killed me, but it won't go away. So I think eventually it's going to get the best of me. You take care, Greg. It's good talking to you, and I shouldn't have mentioned that, but. You know, Greg, I don't have any friends. All my friends either raped and killed my wives and kids, or they stole from me all my life. And that includes all of my relatives. And you know me, Greg, and I'm saying this. I have no family. I have no friends. And I don't think it. I know it. And anybody who ever knew me lies about me, and they're lying about me to hide what they did to me, like steal my inheritance, murder one of my wives, murder my kids, and dump them on my property. All my American neighbors in Detroit and Oakland County, even Diana Ross sings my stolen trademark, not to mark me and point me out. They do that to hide my truth.
Right. Immediately, Hugh, those pedophiles have already began marking my YouTube videos. So the moment that I put a YouTube video up, even the one earlier today, within seconds, I get 5 or 6 invitations to some nude site or something. And at least one of them today was marked by Lambert, which I know, you know, the gay.
Lambert is a gay family that was in my life. Yeah, that's correct. They had a part in murdering the Duncan kids. That's correct.
So none of that's a coincidence.
No,
I knew that immediately
and
what was going on.
the attacks will get worse and worse on you the older you get, Greg. And the police and the FBI are actually behind the attacks. That's what I was telling you earlier. I can date any prostitute in Detroit I want, or New York or Chicago. The police won't arrest me. But if somebody like you does, you're arrested. And that's because I'm part of their plan to steal the government from you, and they don't want to point me out.
Right. Exactly.
And I don't hire anybody. I don't have sex. I haven't had sex in over 17 years since they murdered my wife. don't listen to him, Greg. And you know everything I told you is truth, and you know I gave you documents to back up every word I said. So don't take any guff from anybody, and realize the police and FBI and the presidents and their attorney generals are hiding and lying me. They're lying about me to hide me. And I'm just a crazy old man who never existed, yet I have all the documents that say I do.
And the sad part is, if anyone does say that, you know, that you're just figment of somebody's imagination or whatever, whether they mean to or not, they're contributing to that same pedophile agenda.
No, they're doing it on purpose, Greg. They murder my wives, and they never even put the story of the death in the newspaper. No obituary for 5 dismembered, murdered wives.
Yeah.
No obituary, Greg. Can you imagine that? You go home and you find your kid and your wife dead, dismembered, and it's not even in the local newspaper.
And I wouldn't want to be the sad person who contributed.
And then the Attorney General
to those
puts natural causes on the death certificate, Greg, when your wife's throat is slit. Mm-hmm. She gets hung in a leash, or her legs cut off, or her ears are cut off. It's natural causes, Greg. Right. And black police chiefs have done that to me all over the country. I'm black. And there's a black man in Johnson City, chief of police, doing that to me right now. Instead of making out of my wife's murder report, he says, can't you just leave it to God? I never heard a police chief say, just leave it to God. We're not going to make out a report. That's what a black police chief in Johnson City said to me. Just for the record.
Well, Hugh, we better just go ahead and cut it off there. That's a lot of information for anybody to absorb. So let's just end it right there.
I know I scare you with my truth. You take care, Greg.
All righty.
Bye-bye.